I want you to think about the last week at work. How many meetings did you sit in? How many tickets did you close? How many PRs did you push? Now, I want you to think about a different question. What actually changed because you were there? Because those are two very different questions. And most of us, if we're being honest, have a much easier time answering the first one. There's something quietly happening in software jobs right now. The work has become more about appearances rather than actual contribution. You show up, you're on calls all day, your Jira board is moving, and your stand up sounds productive. From the outside, everything looks fine. But you go home and you just feel hollow, like you ran a marathon on a treadmill. And I think a lot of developers feel this, but nobody really talks about it directly. So let's talk about it. The modern software job, especially at larger companies, has drifted towards optimizing for looking busy rather than actually being valuable. And the sad part is the system kind of rewards it. You close tickets, you get a decent review, you sit in meetings, and you seem engaged. But none of that is the same as actually doing something that matters. Let me start with meetings, because I think this is where a lot of the hollow feeling comes from. There's a concept called the maker schedule versus the manager schedule. The idea that managers think in hour-long blocks and can slot meetings anywhere, but developers need long, uninterrupted stretches to actually get into their work. A single meeting in the middle of your day doesn't cost you 1 hour. It costs you the entire morning or afternoon because you can't get into the flow of things knowing that an interruption is coming. The worst meetings are the ones where nothing actually gets decided. You know the ones. The sync that really just could have been an email, the status update where you tell 6 people what's already visible on Jira, the call that ends with, let's take this offline, meaning it should have just been a message to begin with. Meetings should solve problems. That's it. If you're in a room, virtual or otherwise, and nobody's making a decision or resolving a disagreement or unblocking something, that meeting should have been a message. And this isn't just about your time, it's about what work means. When half your day is meetings and half is context switching back from them, you've trained yourself and the people around you to think that presence is the same as contribution. It's not. Now, let's talk about code. Because you might be thinking, okay, fewer meetings, more coding, that's the answer, right? Well, not exactly. Here's the other trap. Writing code without any real understanding of what it's for. You get a ticket, you implement the ticket, you close the ticket. Repeat until Friday. I've been there, and on paper, it looks fine. The board is moving, sprint velocity looks healthy, but you're not really thinking, you're just executing. The thing is that tickets are an abstraction. They're a translation of what a business need is into a task. And somewhere in that translation, a lot of context gets lost. The why behind the feature, what problem it's actually solving for the user, whether there's a better way to solve it. When you just close tickets, you're only ever working with the translation. You never work with the original context behind it. And that's a problem for 2 reasons. First, the code you write when you understand the why is always better. You make better trade-offs, you ask the right questions, you flag when something doesn't make sense. Second, and this is more important to your career, ticket closing doesn't build judgment. It just builds execution speed. And execution speed is valuable, but it's also the thing that's easiest to replace. Judgment isn't. Now, there's a line I keep coming back to. Output is not the same as impact. Output is how much you produced. Impact is what changed because of it. A developer can spend a week building a feature that nobody asked for, and that solves a problem that doesn't exist. Their output is high, their impact is zero. Another developer spends half a day asking uncomfortable questions in planning meetings and saves the team a lot of work. Their output that week looks low, their impact is enormous. And the frustrating thing is that in most companies, the first developer gets recognized more because output is visible, impact is harder to measure. So people optimize for what gets seen. And gradually, the work stops being about solving problems and starts being about appearing to solve problems. That's the trap of looking busy. And it quietly kills your passion. I don't think most developers started their careers wanting to close tickets. Most people got into this because they genuinely like building things. There's something deeply satisfying about looking at a problem, figuring out how to solve it, and watching it work. But if you spend enough time in an environment where thinking isn't really rewarded, where the goal is throughput, not insight, you stop thinking. You put your head down, you move fast, and you stay out of trouble. And somewhere along the way, you stop caring about what you're building, which is fine for the company, but it's terrible for you. Because once you stop caring, you stop growing. You stop asking interesting questions. You stop building the kind of judgment that makes you genuinely valuable, not just employable, but irreplaceable in the way that actually matters. So, what do you actually do about this? First, decide that every meeting you're in has to justify your presence. Before you join, ask what decision is being made or what problem is being solved. Do you actually need me? If the answer to all those questions is unclear, either skip it or suggest it gets moved to a chat or a thread. You don't have to be aggressive about it. You can just say, I think this one might work better as a chat. Want me to message everyone? Most reasonable people will appreciate it. Second, before you start any ticket, understand why it exists. Not just the technical spec, the reason. Who is this for? What's broken without it? What does success actually look like? This might take 5 extra minutes of reading or a quick message to the PM, but it changes the way you approach the work. You'll catch things that don't make sense, you'll make better implementation choices, and you'll be the kind of developer that people actually want in the room when something goes wrong. Third, learn how to connect your work to the business goals. This sounds more corporate, but it's actually just useful. Most companies have a small number of things they're trying to achieve: grow revenue, reduce churn, cut costs, improve retention. If you understand which of those your work is touching, you can make better decisions about the trade-offs. And finally, start asking questions in spaces where decisions get made. Not to be difficult, not to slow things down, but because you care about what gets built. What's the user behavior we're trying to change? Do we have any data on why people are dropping off here? Is there a simple version of this we could ship first? These questions mark you as someone who's invested, someone who's thinking and not just executing. Look, I'm not saying any of this is easy. A lot of companies have systems that make it genuinely hard to do meaningful work. But here's what I've seen consistently across my career. The developers who stay excited, who keep growing, who actually build careers they're proud of, they're almost never the ones who got really good at looking busy. They're the ones who decided early on that they were there to solve problems, not just to ship code. That shift in how you see your job, it sounds small, but it changes everything about what you work on, how you talk about your work, and who you become over time. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave a comment. I'll see you next time.